For over 5 decades, the Assad family represented one of the most entrenched dynasties in the Arab world. Beginning with Hafez al-Assad's seizure of power in 1971, the Syrian state became synonymous with authoritarianism, military dominance, and centralized rule. When Hafez's son Bashar al-Assad inherited the presidency in 2000, many Syrians initially hoped for gradual reforms and a more modernized government. Instead, Syria plunged into even tighter authoritarianism, culminating in a civil war that reshaped the region after 2011. By December 2024, after years of sustained conflict, shifting regional alliances, and the steady erosion of foreign support, Bashar al-Assad's regime finally collapsed. Rebel factions entered Damascus, Assad fled into exile in Russia, and a new chapter in Syrian history began. The fall of Assad not only closed a bloody and painful era, but also unleashed a turbulent transition with both hope and uncertainty for millions of Syrians. The immediate aftermath, the formation of a transitional authority, and the regional and global consequences of the end of the Assad Dynasty. The Assad legacy, from stability to brutality. The Assad family's rule was marked by a paradox. On the one hand, the regime projected itself as a pillar of stability in a volatile Middle East. On the other, it relied on harsh repression, sectarian manipulation, and a web of intelligence agencies to maintain absolute control. Hafez al-Assad, 1971 to 2000, built a strong security state, aligning Syria with the Soviet Union and later maintaining a careful balancing act between regional powers. His crushing of the 1982 Hama uprising, in which tens of thousands of Syrians were killed, epitomized the brutality of his rule. Bashar al-Assad, 2000 to 2024, inherited this system. Though trained as an ophthalmologist in London, Bashar quickly adopted his father's authoritarian playbook. The so-called Damascus Spring, which briefly allowed political discussion after he took office, was swiftly shut down. By the time the Arab Spring protests erupted in 2011, Assad Syria was already suffering from corruption, unemployment, and uneven economic development. Protests demanding reforms were met with live ammunition and mass arrests, turning demonstrations into a nationwide uprising. The subsequent Syrian civil war devastated the nation. By the mid-2010s, Syria was fragmented. Assad controlled Damascus and parts of western Syria. Kurdish forces governed the northeast. ISIS rose and fell, and Turkish-backed rebels held parts of the north. Millions were displaced, entire cities reduced to rubble, and Syria became a theater for proxy wars involving Russia, Iran, Turkey, the United States, and Gulf powers. The erosion of Assad's power. Despite years of foreign backing, several critical developments undermined Assad's regime, leading to his fall in 2024. A. Military exhaustion. The Syrian Arab army, once considered one of the strongest in the Arab world, was hollowed out by defections, casualties, and reliance on foreign militias. By the 2020s, Assad's forces were less a national army and more a patchwork of Russian advisors, Iranian units, and Hezbollah fighters. Ordinary Syrian soldiers were demoralized, poorly paid, and increasingly unwilling to fight. B. Economic collapse. Sanctions, corruption, and the destruction of industry left Syria's economy in ruins. Hyperinflation eroded the value of the Syrian pound, food insecurity spread, and basic services collapsed. By 2023, large sections of the population were surviving on international aid. Even loyalist strongholds began voicing discontent as shortages deepened. Loss of external backing. Russia and Iran were Assad's most crucial supporters. However, Russia, deeply engaged in its war in Ukraine, scaled back its military and financial commitment to Syria. Iran, facing economic troubles and domestic unrest, could no longer funnel resources at previous levels. Israel's persistent airstrikes on Iranian and Hezbollah positions in Syria further weakened Assad's allies. This shrinking support network left Assad vulnerable when rebels launched their final offensive. Resurgence of rebel forces. While fractured for years, opposition groups regained strength, particularly in Idlib province, where Islamist faction Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, HTS, consolidated power. Backed by Turkey, HTS and allied groups launched a coordinated assault in late 2024. Their ability to penetrate Assad's weakened defenses signaled the regime's final unraveling. 3. The final days, December 2024. In early December 2024, rebel forces advanced on Damascus. Despite frantic attempts by Assad's commanders to rally defenses, key military positions collapsed. On December 8, 2024, Damascus fell. Assad reportedly fled with his family aboard a Russian military transport, seeking asylum in Moscow. Russian officials later confirmed his resignation, effectively ending the Assad Dynasty. Across Damascus, citizens poured into the streets, some celebrating the end of decades of dictatorship, others fearful of what would come next. Symbolically, state TV was seized by rebel forces who declared the revolution victorious. Images of Assad's portraits being torn down spread worldwide, echoing the downfall of Saddam Hussein in 2003 and Muammar Gaddafi in 2011. 4. The transitional authority takes shape. With Assad gone, a power vacuum emerged. To prevent chaos, leading figures from the opposition and remnants of the state bureaucracy formed an interim leadership. Mohammad Ghazi al-Jalali, Assad's last prime minister, pledged to oversee state institutions until a new government could be formed. Ahmed al-Shara, a senior HTS figure, quickly became the dominant power broker, leveraging his military control to secure the presidency in January 2025. A caretaker cabinet was established under Mohammad al-Bashir, aligned with HTS, to handle daily governance. This uneasy coalition sought to stabilize the capital, restore basic services, and reassure foreign powers that Syria would not descend into anarchy. The Interim Constitution and Transition Plan. Recognizing the dangers of fragmentation, the transitional leadership ratified an interim constitution in March 2025. Key provisions included a 5-year transitional period after which national elections would be held, abolition of the Prime Minister's office in favor of a strengthened presidency, adoption of Islamic law as a primary legal source while pledging protection for minorities and ethnic groups, plans to merge various armed factions into a single national army. For Syrians, the overthrow of Assad has brought relief from dictatorship but also fresh anxieties. The world watches closely as the nation attempts to rebuild from ashes, hoping that this time, a more just and representative system can emerge. Conclusion. The fall of the Assad regime in December 2024 was not just the end of a political dynasty, it was the collapse of a system that had dominated Syria for over half a century. The transfer of power to transitional authority marked both liberation and uncertainty. The coming years will determine whether Syria can overcome decades of war, authoritarianism, and foreign domination, or whether it will remain trapped in cycles of instability. One thing is clear, the story of Syria did not end with Assad's departure. It only entered a new, uncertain chapter. If you found this detailed breakdown insightful, don't forget to like and subscribe.